for the viewer rapid tournaments. See if it's running on YouTube as well. Yeah, it looks like it's up and running. All right, well, greetings, folks. We've got, let's see, hopefully audio's okay. We've got our traditional Chess Dojo rapid tournaments today. 15-minute time control, 5 seconds per move. Gaurav in attendance. Hey, Leviathan, how are you doing? The tournaments will start in half an hour. This is up. We're on early as a reminder / alert and all that, as usual. Hey, Skivix. Let's quickly see if they're still playing Blitz in Croatia. Let's check on Gukesh. 35. I guess they finished, huh? Or there's still a game to go? Maybe one game left? No? A Gukesh Prague game here that I don't see it. I don't see a result on this last game here. I don't know. Let's see how the last day went. Draw with Fabi, losses to Fruja and Gary. Draw with Saric. Oh, no, this is a 1-0-1 scoring system. Okay, so a win against Fabi. Losses to Fruja and Gary. Win against Saric. Draw against Magnus. Win against Duda. Losses to Noterbeck and Wesley. Okay. It's a little bit better than yesterday, at least. Let's see. He had 14 points from Rapid, 1.5 points from the first Blitz day, which put him to 15.5. And today, I guess he got 3.5 out of 9. Is somewhat better. Somewhat better. Ay. Magnus won, says Minerva. Sounds about right. Magnus was already in the lead before the second to last, after one day of Blitz. He didn't even need a second day of Blitz. To me, it looks like there's still one round that's not scored here, but results, Magnus 21.5. 19 for Wesley, Duda, and Gukesh. So Gukesh had a bad second day of Blitz. If Wesley and Gukesh are tied with him. He was playing great before. On the last day, he started by losing 3 games, it looks like. Okay. Well, I'm going to look over one or two of Gukesh's games while we wait for our tournament to start. I think this could have been his first game of the day, potentially. Or somehow the rounds might be slightly out of order. I don't normally look at Blitz games, but we're just going to blitz through this one here for a moment. feel like I've seen 2700s have this exact position before. Queen back and forth. Ow. Ow. Wow, that was a vicious little combination. It's not over. Not over. 13 seconds is not great. It's looking really over. Yeah. Brutal. That was annihilating. Let's see another one. Ish. So then there was Noterbeck. Looks like Noterbeck had a good day of blitz. By his score there. Played a center counter. Oof. Okay, threatening rook h3, avoiding it. Playing some good aggressive moves. Now white's got a real position. Rook a4. That's fancy. Avoiding the endgame. So this d5 move is what white's wanted to play for a dozen moves, but it's hard to arrange. Even when white played it, it hadn't really been arranged. They still lose a pawn to do this. Taking on g7, I'm not sure why that's not played. It does cover the b pawn. Black can check, start pushing their d pawn. Gets that pawn. Okay, I see. I've seen Noterbeck win a queen ending before. If there's anyone who's good at queen endings, it might be Noterbeck. Oh, you can't even take on b7 because of queen g7. That's evil. Wow. Okay, I could probably even learn something from that blitz game if I studied it. Wait, here's game 18. There was still a game left to play. Ah. All right, Prague versus Gukesh. If Gukesh wins, he'll get second place overall in the tournament somehow. Prague plays a double fianchetto. Looks very, very good for black at this point in the opening. But if black can't control d4, it's not as good. e4. Kick. Okay. And f3 to bust him. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That pawn on e4 looks pretty close to dead. Whether white takes on e4 with the rook or on e5 with the pawn first. Okay, maybe threatening knight c3 against bishop e4. But white plays bishop e4 anyway, and against knight c3, just take on h7. Keeps the queen out of h5 with that move. Now there's no bishop h7, queen c2 or something, because the knight can drop back to g6 or queen g6. We'll save the piece, so white has to move the queen here. Will knight h3 check do anything? Maybe, maybe not. Depends where white puts the queen. Maybe she goes to c2. Then knight h3 check. Your king can't go to g2 because of rook f2. Yeah, so there's like a downside to every square here for Prague's queen. This is going to cost him a little bit of time. Tricky to say where to go. He took on e4 rather quickly, so he may not have pre-calculated anything about how to handle knight f4. Black's going to have a small chance for like 2 moves here. Hey, Bourbon Hound, do you mean the Chess Dojo Rapid Tournament in 17 or 18 minutes? That'll be chess.com rated. So the queen went to c2. We get knight h3. King can't go to g2 because of rook f2. Good job, Prague, playing his move relatively quickly, so he keeps some time on the clock. Now Gukesh could go knight f2, knight e4, just to break up the bishop pair, take the better of the 2 bishops. Or is there anything more he could hope for? There's the move queen h6 as a possible move. Looking at rook d2, and if rook d1, there's knight f2. So yeah, so he could do it. Could also give the check first in case of rook f1, and after king g2 here, he could play queen h6 as well. Queen h6 or knight e4. Hey, Joker's Brain, welcome, welcome. This is the final round of the Grand Chess Tour Blitz thing that I'm watching while waiting for our tournament to start. It's the only Blitz game I'm seeing live. There goes Gukesh's extra minute on the clock. Well, Bourbon Hound, what are you trying to preserve? And again, playing the Rapid Tournament has nothing to do with really joining the dojo. It's one of many different activities. Some people don't even play rapid chess and they still are part of the dojo. Knight to d4, interesting. Very interesting, and even some surprising there. Wow. That's an odd move because it encourages white to trade that bishop and keep this one. And this is the better seeming bishop, the one that could take on h7 or b7 or drop back to f3 and cover some weak squares. But Prague just pounces on a queen trade. Yeah. Hello. That's the end. Ish. Feels like more or less the end of the game. Oof. Brutal. I mean, we're never gonna switch our tournaments to running them unrated for many reasons. We've been doing this for 5 years. Not that many reasons, but one of the reasons is to help people stop worrying or caring about, oh God, b5. One reason is to help people stop caring too much about their ratings. This is looking pretty brutal, although now with b5, he's saying if the bishop moves off e4, he would have the move rook d2. So white... Oh, and black's threatening knight e4, rook e4, rook d2. So white moves the bishop, allowing rook d2. Idea to play bishop c3, rook c2, rook c1, huh? Oh, but he'd have to play the a1 rook to c1, I think. I mean, the e1 rook to c1, yeah. Okay, rook d3. Huh. online rating is what you care about because you don't have the OTB rating to care about. Gotcha. But, I mean, rated or unrated, you're going to have a similar number of cheaters here in the Dojo events, which is super close to 0. Knight d3. Somehow he's in the game here. He got his pawn back. That rook d3 move was a little bit unexpected. And now he could take on e5? 10 seconds each? We'll talk more about this in a second, Berman. Knight takes e5. He's up a pawn somehow. The other knight can come to d4, which looks like a pretty good square. It does. Rook d2 from Prague. Gets rid of the better bishop after all. Outposts the knight pretty nicely. There goes the a pawn. You'd think white could still draw. King d1 will hold the c2 and c1 squares. And that should just repeat now. Goes after the h2 pawn. Trying to keep the game going. Rook b7 for white. Called it. That's enough to hold. Yeah, you can win the h-pawn, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't even win the h-pawn. Super draw. Okay. Well, I'll take any result that's not a loss at this point as a good result for Gukesh in Blitz, given that he's presumably one of the weaker Blitz players in this tournament. So if you're going to play someone 400 points higher than you and a dojo member, they're going to be even stronger. But since it's rated, I feel like I'm joining to get farmed. But if they're 400 points higher than you, how many points do you lose by losing a game? Like 1 point? You lose 8 points if someone has the same rating as you. Right? Maybe 4 points if they're 200 points lower than you. If they're 400 points lower than you, do you lose 1 point? I feel like you would lose somewhere between 0 and 1 points, would be my guess. Very, very nice. I'm glad you love many of the things we do. You'd lose about 100 points. Really? If you played like 4 games or so? 8 to 12 a game. Jeez. I mean, maybe you know the rating formulas more than me, because you probably care about them more than me. So I'm definitely willing to concede you know them better than me. But my vague sense of... I'm switching the board views here. My vague sense of the rating formulas on chess.com is that when you play somebody of equal rating to you, it's plus 800 for winning, minus 800 for losing. And if you play this rapid tournament from start to end, 6 games would be a normal number of games to play. I know our tournaments are tough. I definitely agree with you on that sense. But I don't think you can lose 100 points in a day. Unless you're rated like 2,400 and you're playing people rated 2,000. But if you think you're going to be lower rated than your opponents, maybe the rating points gained and lost is different at different rating levels. Anybody else want to chime in? How many points you think you win or lose if you, let's say you're 1,000 and you play someone else rated 1,000, so you're equally rated. Anyone have a sense what the points per game are? You're 1,500. So if you played in the tournament, you should be in our second group, which is the 13 to 1,700 group. So you should play people close to you in rating. And you'd be expected to score about 3 out of 6 on average. If our members are really strong, you might score 1.5 or 2 out of 6 instead of 3 out of 6. I feel like if you played the tournament, Bourbon, you'd be more likely to lose 15 points than 100. Seems like if you had a medium tough tournament, but maybe I'm completely wrong. Rank Weiss thinks the K factor might be as high as 12. Bourbon and Rank Weiss, what do your little crowns mean in the YouTube chat? You've got these little crowns next to you. If I click on it, it says, whoa, you're the number 1 and number 3 top fans? Somehow. I don't know what a fan is, but interesting. You're getting punished to play better people and learn. It means you're talking. Okay. It's just a rating of how much you chat. Hey, Kirito-kun. Doing well. How about you? Gonna have our viewer tournaments here in 7 or 8 minutes. That's right, Alex. We need 2 more players in the under 1300 section. So anyone under 1300 out there, just come on in. Be sure to join in the next 5 minutes. At least 2 more people, please. So here's some links over in the your 1200. That's perfect, Kirito. We need 2 people in the under 1300 group. It's the first of those 3 links there. And I don't think I can copy paste this whole thing in YouTube. I think I've tried before and it doesn't let me do it. But I'll try it once. And just see. Nope. Let's see if that goes through. People in YouTube, do you see a chat message from me with like the time control and links to the 3 tournaments? The tournament, the arena lasts up to 3 hours, Kirito-kun and everybody. It starts at 9:30 Pacific time and goes till 12:30 Pacific time. But everyone is free to play as many or as few games as they like. In other words, every time you play a game, it won't start a next game for you unless you click that you want to play another game. It'll just automatically pause the tournament between each game. The message is there. Okay, so I can send the links to the tournaments manually to YouTube. That's cool. All right, and Kirito has joined, Alex. So we only need one more under 1300 player for that section to hold. That's great. Okay, just one more person would be lovely. That's exactly right, Kirito. One more person for it to start, and then other people can always join later and, come and go and pause and join and start. The 13 to 1700 group also needs one more player, folks. 13 to 1700, looking for one more player. And 1700 plus has made it past 4 players. Okay. So So keep my eye on under 1300 for the moment. So Bourbon Hound and I were talking about, at the moment, Kirito, if you wanted to win the tournament, you'd have a big chance to win. Yeah, there are 3 players, and you're the highest rated of them, for sure. Good question, Tarek. Are you playing today, Tarek, or not? Bourbon Hound and I were talking about, how much people may or may not care about their chess.com online ratings and whether that's an impediment or should be an impediment to playing in our online rapid tournaments, which are rated, where you'll play a bunch of other dojoers who tend to be a little bit underrated, or at least, pretty tough. One advantage, Bourbon Hound, you have some fear about cheaters, I heard, right? No, that's not cheating, Kirito. As long as your rapid rating is under 1300, you're in the right section. You're good. By playing in a dojo tournament, Bourbon, you will face some tougher opponents, but you're less likely to face cheaters. So maybe that's a good point for you to consider. Far Eastern is our 4th. Thank you, Far Eastern. All right. So Tarek, I'll answer your question. I'll answer your question second, so to speak, since you're not about to start the tournament. We've got a couple minutes to give you an answer to your excellent question. Right on, Far Eastern. Play a few games. So, Bourbon, on the one hand, you'll face perhaps some stronger players. On the other hand, compared to playing in the random pool, you'll face less cheaters because in the dojo, you've got a far lower percentage of cheaters, right? A lot of the people have kind of a community feeling, playing each other for a while. Know each other through Discord, etc., or joining the training program, that sort of stuff. All right, Prophylaxis says we've got a 4th player in the 13 to 1700 group, so every group is ready for liftoff in a minute or 2 here. Let me just give some final instructions to those playing today. I just like to mention this every day. It looks like we've got pretty much all returning players who all know this already, but very important for everybody playing in these dojo tournaments. You are expected to not listen to my commentary during your games, right? So when you're playing a game, you should mute or close the stream/commentary. Whenever you're done between games, taking a break, whatever, you can come in, chat about the game, probably find your opponent in chat, talk to them or myself, other dojoers if you like, between games. Well, Bourbon Hound, I actually argue that the OTB ratings don't matter either. People should just play and enjoy playing, and then their rating will be what it will be. You can look at it now and then to measure your progress or lack of progress if you so choose. But the more rated games you play, the more accurate that number is. And there's no reason to try to artificially prop it up or artificially keep it down. You just let it be what it'll be and don't worry about it, whether you're playing OTB or offline, etc. I will, Kirito-kun. I'll be watching games in all sections, yeah. So expect that I may watch a game of yours at some point, and if you want to know what I said about it, you can always go back later and watch the video on demand. All these streams get recorded and saved online for a couple weeks, so there's no need to listen while you're playing. On that same theme of not listening to the commentary, I really recommend that you don't do anything else while you play your game. Not play Candy Crush on a phone or text with your mom or whatever it is you might do otherwise. right? Just pay attention to your game while you play your game. Hey, Falk, welcome. Good to see you. So we're going to kick off the games here and get a first game up. Then we're going to be answering a question from Tarek, and maybe Alex wants a similar question about what to do when you can't calculate enough moves in advance. So we're going to get into that. Thank you for muting me, Professor. Kirito-kun is going to listen to some music while playing, and we're going to go check out Kirito's first game here. So Sunday Rapid under 1300 section. Just kicking off. We're going to click open Kirito's game. And once we've got the game open, we're going to answer this question from Tarek. Oh yeah, I know that there's different modes. You can play your absolute best stuff, trying to maximize your results in that game, or you can play newer stuff, hoping to learn more over time in order to play better in some future games. Absolutely, I understand that, Bourbon. I personally do that with my OTB rated games, so you can see how much I care about the rating and all that. I try out new openings without even preparing them in OTB tournaments. Looks like we've got two different flavors of London to kick off the under 1300 group. Good luck to all the players. Hope they're all going to have a good time today, learn something and have fun and all that. Oh no, wait, there's no e-pawn, so this is not necessarily a London. Let's see. It's a Caro-Kann exchange. Knight b5, threatening knight c7. The action gets dramatic very quickly in Kirito's game. Hermat's going to have to work to find a way out of this knight c7 threat here. c3, the knight does not retreat from b5. It's defended by the bishop on f1, so it doesn't have to block the queen check by coming back. All right, so Tarek, you can't calculate 4 or 5 moves in advance. What do you think I can do? So Tarek, are you able to calculate 3 moves in advance? I'm guessing from your question that you are able to calculate 3 moves in advance if you can't calculate 4 or 5 moves in advance. So then the next question is, when you calculate 3 moves in advance, are you pretty accurate for those 3 moves? And I guess that would be 1 move for you, 1 response for your opponent, and then you're planned, and then you've got something ready for that move. Or, you know, let's say you're black here and you see knight c7 coming and you play like rook to b8 to get out of the fork, and then you see bishop takes b8. And that variation is already long enough and you can stop, right? And then you try maybe e5. Bishop takes e5, knight takes e5. So you've now traded off the bishop, so there won't be knight c7. Or we could go e5, pawn takes, attacking our knight. Oh, look, e5 got played, huh? e5, pawn takes, and then we move the knight somewhere to escape the pawn. And again, the pawn on e5 is blocking knight c7. So can you calculate those kind of 3-move sequences pretty accurately? Do you feel pretty confident that you've got the position right when you get to the end of those variations? That would be my first question to you. If the 3 moves are a little bit shaky, then you need to practice doing more 3-move calculations and just getting more and more accurate and confident that you're looking at or imagining the position correctly after 3 moves. In my opinion, our ability to calculate ahead generally expands by small amounts, less than 1 move at a time, because for me there's a consistent process of doing 2 things. Number 1, you make how far you can currently see ahead more clear, more accurate, and then number 2, you push it ahead 1 more half move. And when you push it ahead 1 more half move, it's going to be inaccurate. There's going to be more things where like you reuse a piece, if you know what I mean. Like imagine when black played e5, if they imagine the variation e5, bishop takes e5, knight takes e5, pawn takes e5, knight takes e5 again. That's reusing a piece, right? That's an inaccuracy in calculation. First, you trade the bishop with your knight, then you recapture the pawn with that same knight, right? That's a typical example of like an error when you're pushing your calculation a little bit further than you can calculate well, right? And then you get to this position, you find there's no knight on c6 to take on e5 with. So when you first push yourself an extra half move ahead compared to how far you could calculate before, there's going to be more inaccuracies, more, oops, I didn't see that in the final position. My knight was attacked. You know, I'd been hoping that after sacking a pawn, I would bring out one of these pieces, right? And then you say, oh, shoot, I didn't realize my knight was attacked. So there's going to be more errors, and then you're going to spend a period of time not trying to push yourself from 4 moves to 5 moves, but trying to clean up 4 moves, so to speak, right? So you're on 4 moves, and you just want to make that better and better for a while, for quite a while. And then at some point, when your 4 moves ahead are more accurate, less missed candidate moves, less hallucinations, etc., then you'll at some point start pushing yourself to 5 moves. And so knowing how far ahead you feel comfortable calculating is an important step. It tells you how much further to calculate when you're doing puzzles. By the way, white has a threat here for everybody watching. So if you were looking at this from black's perspective, on this move here as black, you would want to kind of figure out what you'd kind of want to notice white's threat, what changes about the position once this queen lands on d5 here in the middle of the board. So you want to assess the tactical possibilities from black's side. And that's pretty much the answer, Tarek. Does that make sense to you? Make sure you're really comfortable and confident with 3 moves ahead, that mistakes and hallucinations are very low, and then push yourself to 4. And that applies to when solving tactical puzzles. It applies to just when sitting around thinking about chess, when analyzing a position or watching with me. You should be holding yourself to that standard of how many moves ahead you're trying to look, and it should apply during your games. Rank Weiss is saying if you get this bishop out earlier, then you can protect knight b5 with rook c8. We see how fast this knight b5 move came in, right? So let's say Hermatz had brought out the bishop instead of the knight, right? Yes, but black is in trouble. They've already sacrificed 2 pawns trying to keep white from playing knight c7, right? So here, knight b5 in this move order, black again doesn't have rook c8 yet. They do have the move knight a6, which avoids this immediate knight c7 move. So as long as the knight's on b8, you still have this knight a6 option. Let's say white waits a move, developing, and then you play knight c6. Now you don't have knight a6 anymore, but now when white plays knight b5, you have the rook c8 move, right? That Rank Weiss was helping us with, or suggesting. And oh my gosh, the game is already finished. So look at this, folks. Hermatz either didn't see the threat of knight d6 check or didn't see a way to stop it. Played bishop e7, just developing here. And after knight d6 check, white's able to catch the queen, right? So in this position here, after white plays queen d5, I said black needs to check out the new tactical situation. The queens facing each other with a hidden attack through the knight. It's also sometimes called a discovered attack in English, but it's really only called a discovered attack once the knight moves, right? But you need to notice this threat from white before white's knight moves. That's kind of critical to living to living in such a situation, right? So I call this a hidden attack. The two pieces are kind of attacking each other through another piece. So then you have to think, what are the tactics around this piece moving? Right? The queen's undefended. Sometimes in a position like this, you can try to win a piece from your opponent with a6, and if the knight moves away, you win the queen. So this hidden attack can sometimes help white, sometimes help black. Here, a6 is not going to help you because there's a check. Once it checks your king, you have no time to play queen takes queen. You're forced by the rules to respond to the knight check first, then your queen is going to get captured, like in the game, which went bishop e7, knight check, and taking. So what should Hermats have done at this point? Let's say they notice the threat of knight d6 check. There's two main things you can do in such a situation. There's always exceptions and more complicated things you can do, but the main things you can do would be to move one of these two pieces so that there isn't a threat of knight check, right? Or defend the queen. If you defended the queen, then knight d6 check wouldn't be a threat, so to speak. So I'm going to play this move, which is not a good move, but I'm just going to show that it would protect the queen against knight check, bishop takes, queen takes, pawn takes, right? So you're not losing the queen there. Now, it's still a bad move, this b6 move, because white can play a very simple move, queen takes rook, which wins a rook and still putting these pieces in bad situations. So there's no really satisfactory move for black here, but the best move would be to move the queen away, out of the way of the check. That'll save the queen and not hang anything else. So Blibub suggested a retreat to d8, which is plausible, and the other plausible move is queen to b6. You have to be careful where you go because white still has knight c7 that we have to watch out for, right? So black should have brought the queen to either b6 or d8 to avoid losing the queen. Is the position bad for black, right? As Blibub was saying that it was going to still require a contortionist to try and get a good position for black here. Yeah, for sure. Right? Black is already down 2 pawns, and instead of attacking white, they're dealing with threats from white, right? And Kirito has moves like this and others coming, where the white pieces seem to be coming out more freely and aggressively than the black pieces for now. So definitely, it's a very, very tough situation for black there. But better to be in a tough situation down a pawn or two than to be down a queen, right? And once the queen was lost, black resigned the game, which is, kind of reasonable. The arena is on chess.com, and it is chess.com rated. So Tarek answered from before, always trying to solve long tactical problems and take time during games to calculate more. But what I'm trying to say is, Tarek, if you can only calculate 3 moves ahead with confidence, and 4 moves ahead, you're not good. It's not useful to try to calculate 10 moves ahead. Do you see the point? Think about it with something physical and something instead of something mental, and you'll see how obvious it is. Let's say I can lift 20 pounds of weights, right? 20 pounds of weights. And then you give me a weight that weighs 100 pounds. Can I do any practice with the 100-pound weight? Is there anything useful I can do with that 100-pound weight? I can't move the thing. So it's useless, right? That would be like somebody who can see 3 moves ahead trying to solve problems that require you to see 8 or 9 or 10 moves ahead, right? It'd be like me trying to lift a 100-pound weight. You have no possibility of doing it right, and you're not even close enough to doing it for it to provide you good exercise towards being able to do it in the future, right? If you wanted to one day lift if I wanted to one day lift a 100-pound weight, I would have to lift a 20-pound weight a bunch of times till I felt like I was really good at lifting the 20-pound weight. And then I would try and lift a weight that would be like 22.5 pounds or maybe 25 pounds, right? but something like that, just a little increment up from the 20-pound weight. And then I would work with that weight for a long time before I move on to the next weight, probably, right? Maybe after like 2 months of lifting the 22.5-pound weight, I'd be ready to lift the 25-pound weight. So if you're always trying to solve long tactical problems when you can only see 3 moves ahead, and if you're blowing tons of time during your games trying to look 6, 7 moves ahead when you can only accurately look 3 moves ahead, then that's exactly what I was trying to help correct for you. That is too difficult to the point of not being useful, right? You need to know how many moves ahead you calculate, and if you do it really well, start pushing yourself to go half a move further. And if you don't do it really well, don't even try and look any further ahead than that. Just try and make yourself more accurate in the 3 moves ahead that you're currently looking. Was it clear that time? Because I think on the first explanation, you totally did not get what I was trying to say, meaning I said it badly or not clearly enough. It needs to be incremental, and it's 2 increments per 1 move ahead that you look, right? 1 increment is pushing oneself ahead half a move. The other increment is getting better at calculating that half move ahead, right? Because if in the example with weights, I could go to the gym 3 times a day. I could live in the gym in a tent, right? And I would never be able to lift a 25-pound weight because I'm only practicing pulling on a 100-pound weight that I can't even lift. I would never get any better because I would never like finish a lifting motion, right? I would just stand there holding onto the thing, not moving. So, yeah, you could do all the work you want. Let's say I'm 1,000 rated in chess and I get Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual. And I study it, so to speak. I read through the thing. I play out moves on a board. I can't follow them. I don't understand them. I don't know the evaluations of any of the positions. Can you see that a 1,000 rated player could study an endgame book 10 hours a day? This is a book that's intended for basically IMs. Basically 2,400 FIDE level book. Up, that's like the bottom range, up to 2,600. A 1,000 rated player could spend 10 hours a day working on that book and never get any better at the end game, right? Just tugging on a weight that they can't do. All right, let's check out a game from the 13 to 1,700 section now that we've checked out the under 1,300 section. I see somebody over 1,300 in the under 1,300 section, so Dakota, I hope you have your reasons. Let's see, Chess Dojo Chess Club. Find the 13 to 1,700 group. Go to it. And let's pick out a game to watch here. Boondock Striker and Leviathan already deep into their game. Interesting maneuver coming in here from Boondock Striker. Oh, no, sorry, from Leviathan. Going after the weak e3 pawn, but e4 is possible as a counterstroke. This is the critical moment of the game, potentially, right here. E4 seems to hook one of those 2 minor pieces. The rook on a1 would drop. e4, knight takes a1. If you play pawn takes one of those pieces, the knight's going to come out at c2. So e4, knight takes a1. The first move we would presume or look at would be rook takes a1. Then can the knight and bishop escape from the pawn? Don't tell us about it now, Kirito. I know that this player should not be in the under 1,300 section. I don't know why they're there. But play the game the best you can enjoy it, and come back and talk to us after the game. But I can't tell you anything about the game during the game. Okay, so we're calculating here, folks. E4, knight A1. Knight takes A1, to be more clear. Rook takes A1. And then can the bishop and knight escape from the pawn? Or does black have any other counter threat that could outweigh the threat? No, I think black would play something like knight takes f4, pawn takes f5, and we get an endgame with two minor pieces against rook and one or two pawns. I think that's what white should try here. The alternative is you save your rook and you let black take this pawn for free. Feels pretty bad to me. All right, Boondock Striker gives it the consideration the move deserves. Long think and goes for e4. Correct move in my understanding of the situation. That seems like the right choice. And importantly, that was a good use of time for Boondock Striker. 3.5 minutes on the move. Feels reasonable. You don't want to use all your time on a move just because it's a critical move. Because you need to leave some time to play the position afterwards. Yeah, Falk, you could also take on e4 to get a pawn there. It's somewhat similar to knight a1, rook a1. You can then play bishop e4, knight e4, knight f4, or you can play knight f4, ef5, ef5. Gives you the option of throwing in knight takes e2 if you want to face knights and not a bishop. So knight f4 gives you the chance of trading off white's bishop. Bishop e4 keeps a cleaner pawn structure. So that's kind of the choice between those two. It's a detail for Galrav to figure out. You can definitely start with knight a1, rook a1, because you definitely want the rook. Hey TR33, you should mute or close the stream during your games, and then anytime you're taking a break between games, come on in and join us and talk about your game or whatever else is on your mind about the chess tournaments, etc. Galrav thinking a while here. Just like Boondock Striker, Galrav knows this is an important moment in the game. Oh, sorry, for anyone who doesn't know, the Leviathan. Leviathan is Galrav, so the Leviathan thinking here. Goes for bishop takes e4. And then taking on a1. So now white's got to go rook a1, knight f4. No need to apologize. Totally understand. We always have some first timers. It's a normal thing. You can't do something until you learn or until you ask, and you asked. So, well done. Enjoy your game. We're definitely getting some trades in here. Hey MS. If you have questions about the Grand Chess Tour, you can ask me. Before our tournament started, I did check out the last round of the Grand Chess Tour. I saw Gukesh versus Prague and also saw one or two of his Blitz games from earlier today. Not live, but we even caught one live. In general, this endgame here is going to be very close to equal, which means we're going to get to see Boondock and Leviathan's endgame skills. Gonna be relatively close to equal. Now, I favor bishops over knights in a lot of endgames, a lot of middle games too. But I would probably have tucked this bishop here myself. And white might worry that after knight d3 check, attacking the b pawn, we have to give this bishop anyway, so what's the point of bishop f1? But my guess would be we could play king e3, knight b2, rook here, and oh no, I hadn't looked at knight d1 earlier. I'd looked at knight a4 and rook d1. I was going to say with two main options, but actually there's knight d1 might ruin the plan. So first of all, you can see that knight a4, I'd be happy to just take this pawn from black. But furthermore, I was thinking even rook to d1, that as white, I would be perfectly happy to make this trade this way instead of before, because when we take on b7, so this would be like letting the knight trade for my bishop, right? But I traded one pair of pawns as white, and I'm in position to actually maybe make some threats against black. And if you're the side with the knights, you need to start coordinating some threats. Whereas rook c1, black can probably play rook a c8. I mean, knight e2, king e2 first, right? And then probably rook a c8. And there won't be any threats for white once the white rook gets traded off. It'll be like a slow maneuvering endgame without any threats for white. But that said, my suggestion, bishop f1, might lose to this move knight to d1 here. If the king goes to e2, oh, we've got knight c3 covered. Whew. Oh my goodness. Okay, so it would be complicated. We'd go here, threatening rook takes d1. Knight can't move anywhere. Black has to play f5. If this knight moves, then knight c3 check is winning, right? So now we're forced to trade the rook. Man, we lost a pawn and we're trading the rook. All this just to keep our bishop, but now it's 3 pawns. Gotta take the knight. Knight here. But it does look like this bishop comes to c4, and these pawns are in bad shape for black. Actually, I mean, I do like this better than the game, even with this tricky tactical variation. So it feels to me like bishop f1 is a little bit better than rook c1 here. Knight e2, rook c8. Yeah. Rooks trade off, king d3. Now black's going to centralize the king and then slowly nudge forward this pawn majority here. Nothing wrong with being an optimist, but I would guess I would prefer to be black. Although the position's probably close to equal, I feel like there's a little bit more chances for black here than white. Myself. You know, just as you get into endgames, deeper into endgames, knights become worth a little bit less if there are pawns on both sides of the board. Rooks become worth a little bit more. Pawns become worth a little bit more. So this material balance should be pretty good for black in an endgame, I would think. We'll see how they handle it. I see Gaurav's been getting a little bit lower on time here. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to play this endgame getting under 2 minutes here. Definitely that counts as time pressure. h6, nice little move, taking a square from the knights. Preparing to advance the f-pawn or the e-pawn. We can make another little suggestion for black here. Of rook c1. There's only a narrow area on the board for the rooks here, right? So it's possible for white to maybe cover all these squares at some point, even just play a move like knight c3 to block the file. So if you get in here before all the squares get covered, now your rook has access to attack white's pawns, which is going to stretch their defenses a little bit. So normally rook c1 would be a nice little accomplishment for black here. It doesn't always matter, but I'd be strongly inclined to try the move. g4 from white. Okay, gaining space on the king side and restraining some of these ideas perhaps for black. f6 preparing e5, b6 stopping knight c5, and white goes for a pawn trade. Foos recalls reading that it's generally beneficial for the side with two rooks to trade off one of the rooks. Yeah, I agree. And that happened here, and I didn't like it from white's perspective. I think Bourbon Hound still prefers black, but says that with under a minute, it's going to be pretty hard to convert. Black's not winning either as far as converting, right? I don't know if black's winning. They're better. It's more and more obvious that they're better with these two pawns. Rook goes active. Nice from Gaurav. Can play rook a1. Could play rook f1 at the wrong moment. Once this knight comes to c3 maybe. The problem is, like, part of black's advantage should be that white should be under more pressure and use up more time. If you've got the slightly better side of a position that's close to equal, but you're using up all your time, then you're not really better, if you see what I mean. Like, your betterness is based on the opponent's moves being harder to find, but if they're finding their moves faster than you, then you're not doing so hot. All right, the sun's out. I'm going to turn off the lights to save electricity. Now Boondock is thinking about it. Yeah, the rook is pretty happy here, at least, for sure. Agreed. b5. Fixing the pawns. So now white's got this idea of knight d4, knight c6, going after the a pawn. And black here may want to play e5 to avoid that. That looks pretty logical to me. Goes for rook a1 first. That's going to force knight c3. Boondock Striker was ready for it. Gaurav down to 20 seconds. Yeah, Foos, I would say even with a bishop pair, the side with the two rooks is better off trading one of them. It reduces the different kinds of coordinations and attacks that the bishop pair can do using the rook. And also, just in general, when your opponent has a bishop pair on the board, life sucks for your rooks, right? Because they're always threatening to take them. So the less rooks you have on the board, the less your position sucks when your opponent has a bishop pair. All right, so Gaurav flexing the range of the knight, but we get the knight c6 plan comes in. Knight check, and the king can't get back to f6 because these squares are covered by the knight. And Boondock Striker in great position now. Choice of pawns. Grabs the one on f6. So things have gotten worse for black, right? And we could feel that with the time usage, that black just was not confident how to handle this position. Yeah, Elise also wanted to play e5 for black, just like me. We're getting some checks. Maybe Gaurav can hold with checks, but I think eventually white can bring the king to d4 and block on the fourth rank with the knight. So there's no need for the game to end here. You know, it's not a forced repetition that we're looking at. Although he's now gotten this position 3 times, so gets a draw by repetition. That's basically an escape for Leviathan at this phase in the game with the position they've got now, right? We could consider this an escape. Had White wanted to keep playing, this might be the move, because Rook H4 check, there's knight E4. But there's Rook A3 then, huh? That's maybe... Boondock Striker was more in the zone than us. Maybe that's why Boondock Striker did not insist on keeping the game going. Yeah? I see. And you can never block with the other knight on the 4th rank. Right? We can never go for King C4, Rook check, Knight D4 for anyone who's wondering, because of E5. The only safe way to block on the rank is here, here, here. There the pawn can't threaten your knight, and you've got the plan of advancing King E5 to improve the game. But King D4, Rook A3, that's going to be a draw. Even here, Elise thinks White should play on. I mean, there's nothing really to play on here. Once Black takes that pawn, you can't checkmate with just knights. The Rook can take the pawn. You know, then even play Rook A1, Rook B1, take your pawn. I mean, no, there's no way to play on. White doesn't have enough pawns. Fascinating endgame. That was really cool. All right, let's see a game in this section from the beginning, shall we? This one's pretty far along. We've already got a queen versus rook and piece imbalance. Okay, this game looks good. Oh, I see what you mean, Elise. Yeah. Because Black was low on time, you can just keep playing forever for White. Yeah, hope to get a knight fork or or a flag or something like that. Of course, that makes sense. You've got a lot of pros join the under 1300 group, Kirito. That's crazy. Wait, Black just won an exchange while I wasn't paying attention properly. King, queen here, knight here, take. Oh no! Knight here blocked the bishop's control over the e3 square. Wait, and I'm in the 13 to 1700 group. Why is there a 1000 against a 2100 in the 13 to 1700 group? Hey, folks. Hopefully nobody playing is actually listening. But come on, let's go to the correct sections, please. We have 3 groups by rating. Under 1300s go in the under 1300 section. 1500s go in the 13 to 1700 section. 2100s go in the over 1700 section. What are you doing? What are you doing in here? Free rating for who, Bourbon Hound? The 2000 or the 1000? I saw the queen first, Elise. Okay. Let's watch this more evenly balanced Dakota versus Emergence game. Double king pawn, aggressive e5, but it just loses that pawn. And then we get some development. You wouldn't bet on the 1,000 winning, right? But would you bet on the 2,100 gaining rating? I think if you're 2,100 and you beat someone rated 1,000, you get 0 points, Bourbon Hound. I'm pretty sure, because I get people rated 1,000 points below me challenging me all the time, and it says win plus 0, lose minus 1,000,000. So I don't think you seem to care a lot about rating, but I'm not sure you know how ratings work. And like you, I don't mean that in a negative or insulting way. Just a mildly funny way, but I'm, you know. If you think 2,100s are getting free rating by playing 1,000s, I think they literally can't get any rating points. They only risk their ratings. They're risking it. Shouldn't you be terrified for the 2,100? They could lose so many rating points in one game. All right, nice move from Emergence here. A5, making some more space for the bishop on b6, which was almost surrounded by pawns. And after b5, we can see the bishop's got more safe squares. So that's very nice. Emergence puts a rook on the open file here. Everything looks nice for black. Oh, good question, George Hornsby. So let's say your bishop's feeling hemmed in, and you want an extra square for your bishop. George Hornsby asks, when should we play a6 versus a5? Yeah, of course. Send me a challenge, Bourbon Hound. I'm David Pruess on here. I mean, I probably have some challenges sitting around already. Oh, but that's a 3-day challenge. Yeah, it's good to learn about the things we're not sure about, right? I'm not sure either, but I feel like I've seen challenges that say +0 for me. Okay, so let's try and answer George's question. You know, when should black play a6 versus a5, right? So one thing would be, would you like to or not like to trade a pawn? If you'd be happy enough trading a pawn, then you might want to put your pawn where it attacks white's b pawn. If you want to keep the area closed, then the opposite would obtain, right? That you might want to put your pawn where it's not attacked by white's pawn. So if black didn't want to trade pawns, and they wanted to keep the area closed, they might play a6, and if b5, then play a5. Here, black was happy to trade pawns, right? So they played a5. They've got a pawn majority on the queen side, so that'll tend to help them eventually conquer some extra squares there. And white's rook on a1 is undefended, so they even have this a takes b as just a straight-up threat. If white traded on a5, then white's pawn structure is left isolated, right? And black's pretty happy with the position of their pieces. So black was happy to trade pawns, so they played a5 instead of a6, and white was so unhappy to trade pawns that they played b5. You could say grabbing space, but to my eye, it mostly weakens these two squares. So as black, I'm happy to see that I played a5, gaining some room for my bishop, and white had to respond with a little pawn move, weakening their own pawn structure in my eyes. So that would be how I would assess this situation. There's too many different possible scenarios for me to cover all of them right now, of course, right? Yeah, David Pruess username. But, so who wants to trade pawns? That's definitely going to be one factor. What else is there? Oh, George, sometimes white has like a knight on d2. And the move a5 is sometimes not good because of knight c4. Threatening your bishop, and if you drop back with that bishop you were trying to protect, you drop the a5 pawn. right? So sometimes if white has knight c4 hanging over black, the preference will be a6 because, depending on the calculation, but because of some calculations around a5, knight c4 might not work. It should be able to pair you with somebody rated 1,000, Kirito, yeah. Maybe if you haven't been paired for 5 minutes, it's waiting for some other people to be free, or maybe it's waiting for somebody closer in rating to you to be free. All right, we've got a challenge from Bourbon Hound. And on my side, it's not currently showing the rating gain or loss. Do you see the potential win-loss points, Bourbon Hound? I could always join the game and abort. I can't abort too much, but I don't abort too much, so I could join and abort to see the points. All right, let's do it. Me against Bourbon Hound. Win +0, draw -8, lose -16 is what it shows on my side. Win +0, draw -8, lose -16. So that indicates that there's 16 points total at stake. Meaning if I played somebody with the same rating as me, Bourbon Hound, I would stand to win or lose 8 points. And when I play somebody way below me, I'm threatening to lose tons of points, but I can't gain any. If I play somebody way above me, where I'm more likely to lose, then I can't gain any. Then I can only gain points and I can't lose any. Right? So if I played somebody rated, whatever, 3,000 in Blitz, maybe I would lose 0 points for losing the game. Yeah. Did it show you the same numbers, or were your numbers bigger than mine? Do you have a higher, what they call a K factor? The pawn was lost way back here, Warrior Boys, right at the beginning, e5. There's a variation where you trade knights and then play e5 to kick the opponent's knight. Maybe Dakota got confused about that, but they tried to kick the knight and the pawn just got taken. So they've been down a pawn the whole game. Oh my gosh, and we missed most of the game answering George Hornsby's, well, talking about a few things, not just George Hornsby's question, but hopefully, George, I gave you some kind of a useful answer about a5 and a6. We're going to have to move along here a little bit, I guess. So you saw much bigger numbers than me because your rating is more volatile, so you've got a bigger K factor. So you see black using all these squares here that were gained partly by this a5 move, right? So we can see how in this case the pawn structure ended up giving black good squares. Even though I haven't said every single detail about what will or won't cause you to gain control of these squares, but white goes for a sack here on b7, but black's able to just trade off that knight hitting white's queen, and come out way ahead on material here. So immersion's way up here. Less games played, yeah. Okay, so if you played a million games, maybe your K factor would go down, Bourbon Hound. Or maybe for lower rated players, they'll keep it a little bit higher than for me. Oh yeah, Blib Up notices that white's just playing too quickly, right? They've got 14.5 minutes out of 15, so obviously their moves are going to lack a certain amount of depth compared to black's moves. Now this passed pawn threatens to end the game. Okay. Well, at some point, Bourbon, when you've played a few more games, I think the swing might reduce, right? And it might get to a point where if you're playing someone your own rating, it's only 8 rating points on the line. And I guess that explains some of why you thought you might be able to lose 100 points in one tournament. And I thought that losing 20 or 30 points is more plausible. Rook F1. Black's got a nice little combination here. I wonder if emergents will look for it or just simple, get rid of their own back rank. Play it simply. Anyone in chat see what combination emergents could have played here? Sack the queen, exactly. You take on F1, and then on king takes, back rank mate, just before white could give back rank mate themselves, right? Okay, G6. Bring the rook around. This is good, simple play from black. Just 100% chance of winning the game playing like this. Sometimes it's better to have those simple habits, right, folks? I mean, if you just avoid getting back rank mated yourself, you're up a queen, etc. Sometimes that's the easier. All right. Now we're finally going to journey to the 1700 plus group and check out one of their games. So bear with me. I'm going to open up a new game. I don't think I saw JBS's Game Chess Being, so I'm not sure why either. Okay, 1700 plus group. Oh, we've got Wandering Puppet playing. Let's see that. All right, queen and same colored bishops. Why would king h1 just have been played? Well, this a takes b3 move. White couldn't take because of queen takes rook. So the whole queen side just fell apart right there. And we're just seeing the part of the game where white gives up, basically. All right, so let's just go back a few moves, see something a little bit instructive here, and then we'll watch another game in entirety. So in this position here, you see black advancing the isolated A pawn, right? Gaining scope and space for the rooks on the queen side. Although black has 2 pawns against 3 on the queen side, it's not easy to block both diagonals from these bishops, plus a potential file from the rooks. So black's looking to basically do what's called a minority attack here, or put pressure against white's pawn majority on the queen side. They didn't play rook b8 because they anticipated white was going to play b3. Instead, they played a5, and at some point they'll play rook a8, rook a to b8, or rook fb8. But as soon as white plays b3, black's ready to crank some pressure here with c4. White blocks the bishop's threat. Queen comes here, but now this rook is attacked. And it should go to b1. Maybe white was worried about the move bishop f5, right? Which is going to win an exchange for black. But you're better off losing an exchange in these bishop pair positions than losing 1 or 2 pawns, in my opinion. White plays bishop h6, a clever way to stop bishop a1, but after black takes and takes on b3, the entire queen side is gone. Black's going to win at least 2 pawns, some risk of winning 3. That's 2. That's the rook. All right. I mean, you can see black could take on a2 and be up 3 pawns. But instead they trap the rook. And now black's up a rook, and we're going to go find another game. So you guys see the power of that a5, a4 plan right there from National Master Wandering Puppet. Let's click around. This is deep in the end game. I'm going to look for a game that's sort of earlier on in the game. Whoa, scary-ish for peaceful, huh? Did white sacrifice anything for this position? One pawn. And they're currently threatening pawn takes pawn, detonating the king side. f6 might be playable as well. Yeah, it is. f6 is good too. Two big threats from white. Let's see what other positions we've got here. We've got Aaron up against another master, and they're early on in the game, so this could be a good game. It looks like a confusing position, though. I might struggle to commentate a position that looks that hard to understand. And then we've got Lauren and Sanyal chess. White's won a pawn in the opening, but didn't yet get castled. Black's got good chances here with the bishop pair and some weak squares. Queen b6, right? Winning back the pawn on b2 on the dark squares. There it comes from Sanyal. So I think I might attempt to comment this Aaron game. I don't know this Sinister Apple, obviously a very strong player, but I don't know them from past tournaments. Let's see what's going on here. Knight takes a7. We get an exchange. White's maybe gunning for bishop b5 after pawn takes b4. Oh, and I've got a whispered message. Oh, very nice. OTB tournament. Can I do a 1,200 viewer rapid arena? Well, KSJ, we've got an under 1,300 group. If you play in that, we'll get a pretty good sense of who the best 1,200 is. 12 to 1,400, something closer in rating. I would do that KSJS if we had more players. Oh, somehow Aaron did get out of this without losing anything on the D file. Let me just check what happened here. So basically, KSJS, how small I can split the groups depends on how many people show up on time for the tournaments. The more people show up each week, the more groups I'll split it into, and that'll make it smaller and smaller groups. So, and then when less people show up, I'll split it into bigger groups just to make sure the tournaments happen. So that's just something that I'm constantly willing to adjust. So white played knight d4 here. I was worried about bishop to b5. I guess the rook was already defending the knight. So bishop b5, bishop takes f3 would have survived for black. Okay, I get it. So the apple heads for knight e6. Queen moves out of the way. Knight e6 threatened again. King moves out of the way. Knight e6 attacks a lot of things. It comes in. Knight on d7 is dangling, as is the rook. Is there anything for black to do about these threats? You can play whenever you like, KSJS, yeah. And Alex, yes, there's somebody in the wrong section. We also have a 2100 in the 13 to 1700 group. So we've got a few people today in the wrong sections. So folks, go to the right sections. So what is Aaron's idea? Rook d7, queen c6 maybe? Is the hope? White can go rook takes b7 and still be up comfortable 2 pieces against a rook. Yeah, I don't think there's anything better than that. Apple agrees. Whoa! I wasn't ready for that. Rook takes c4 with the idea of queen e6, but what about rook d8 check here? Rook d8 check seems to win the queen here. I mean, for some pieces, but not enough of them. Yeah, you can, KSJ. Can somebody type !play to give KSJ the link to the under 1300 tournament? All right, so we see a display of mastery here from Sinister Apple. We see the probing for a weakness, putting pressure on the opponent, right? And then the calculation phase. Rook takes knight, calculating queen c6 and rook c4, and dealing with them. Bam. No, KSJ, I'm about to go down to the under 1300 section now that we saw a game from the highest section. I continually rotate through the three groups. I try to look at one game from under 1300, then one from 13 to 1700, and then one from 1700 plus, and then just come back around the horn again. So here we go, folks. Kirito-kun, who is interested in winning this tournament, is currently in first place and currently playing a game here. We have already seen a Kirito-kun game. It was against Hermats, so we've also seen one game of Hermats's. Here we've got Hermats against Road to 2000. Last try. And nice, both these games are in the opening, so they're good games for us. I think I'll stick with this one here maybe for the moment. Let's just check out how it got here. So we start with a queen pawn game, and then white switches it to the queen's gambit. You can often delay c4 as white if you want and then still play it, right? Black defends the d pawn nicely and has the bishop outside the pawn chain. So 4 moves in, this has the look of a good opening for Road to 2000. White goes queen b3, poking at the weakness of bringing the bishop out, right? And we get b6 to protect the pawn. Generally, it's preferable to develop the queen to c7 or b6 and defend the pawn, right, with development. So b6, small weakening move, another pawn move, just a little something to get white, to give white some happiness, some joy, some hope. And white goes for the exchange now, so the bishop covers these squares. And after c takes d5, black's already in big danger to bishop b5. This is very risky here. It's hard to defend the diagonal this early with the bishop out here and b6 played, weakening these squares, you know, no knight c6. So after cd5, I'm guessing it would have been more prudent to take with the e pawn and not allow bishop b5. I don't see a forced win yet with bishop b5 because knight d7, knight e5 attacking the piece twice. There is knight f6 defending it for now. I don't see a 100% forced win for white, but it looks very, very dangerous for black. Huge pressure, and I'm sure white's position, even if it's not good enough to win, is good enough to keep black in a bad position or win a pawn or something like that. So the opening's now going badly for black. We can see the cost of this b6 move, right? An extra pawn move in the opening can sometimes have some painful consequences. Now, white's going to be looking at moves like queen a4, simple move castling. You could also spend your time looking at moves like bishop c6 and knight c6 if you've got the wrong sense of how close you are to winning the game. Those moves are not going to win. If you have the wrong sense and you think you're really close to winning the game, though, then you look at this kind of move, right? You look at your most threatening moves, trying to win the game. You can spend a lot of time looking at them, trying to find some way to win the game with threats, and it's not there yet. And it can be exhausting and frustrating. If you have the correct sense and you know I don't yet have enough to break through, I need to bring more, then you can just play some developing moves, right? Merles has a pretty interesting idea. E4 pawn sack, and then after black takes it, you go bishop g5. That's an attempt to trade the knight and just win the game by force immediately. Let me think. Is there any defense to e4? No, there's not. Well spotted, Merles. Wow, so white has a winning move right here. But a super fancy, tricky one to find. Not the kind of move that you would expect to find in an under 1300 game. It would require great alertness to the potential of the situation, and then to have the flexibility of thought to consider moves like e4, sacking a pawn to develop the piece. Now, once you've been around for a while and you know of this move, an experienced player like Merles, he didn't have to stretch his mind to consider e4. E4 is a move that Merles has seen before in similar situations. Like so, Hitman Agent. E4 attacks the bishop, so black doesn't have much time to react to white's secondary threat. They have to kind of take the pawn, right? And then when you take it, with pawn or with bishop, white's going to play bishop g5. Once they play bishop g5, black can't avoid bishop takes knight on f6, removing the defender of d7. So whatever you do here is black, even if you counterattack white. They'll take here, threatening your queen, so you have no time to take on b5. And then however you take back on f6, white's going to win a piece on d7. And in fact, depending on how we do it, things could be even worse. Like this is checkmate, for example. But that's the basic idea, is that white wants to play this move, bishop g5, remove the only defender of the knight on d7. So if you could play bishop g5 here as white, that would be a simple move for you if your pawn weren't on e3, right? If your pawn weren't on e3, then I think we would all consider bishop g5. And we would say, oh man, that's like a killer move, right? We're trying to pressure d7. Now, if you've seen e4 before, it might come to mind like, oh, e4, then bishop g5. But if you've never seen e4 before, it's a very, very hard process to invent a new tactical pattern you've never seen before. You know what I mean? Like, you'd have to stretch your mind. You have to be like, okay, I want to play bishop g5. Is there any way, but the e-pawn's in my way. Is there any way to make bishop g5 happen even though I can't play bishop g5? Like, that's how chess players come up with new ideas in general. It's some kind of a thought process where you figure out something important, the position, something you'd like to do, but you can't seem to do it. And then you sort of look like, is there any way to make the impossible thing happen? Right? That's how people come up with new ideas. But for the most part, most chess players are mainly repeating patterns they know before, as Hitman Agent says, pattern recognition, right? So the odds are low that Blunderfest just invented e4 just now, right? The odds are much higher that they've seen e4 before in some similar situations. So white castled after 1 minute of thought. Black plays bishop d6, and white makes a trade on d7. So for now, black is surviving. Recapture from black. Next move, black could castle, and the danger would be gone. Well, enjoy your brilliancy, Kirito. As I've told you a few times today, I know it's your first time, and you're very welcome here on your first time. But I'm not going to look on the board at games while people are playing them. You know, we're not here to stunt on our opponents. Or to have me laugh along with you as somebody else gets checkmated or something like that. So, white's got one move here before black gets castled. No problem, Kirito. I know it's your first day. You'll get to know me, and either you'll like it here or not. One move for white to keep black from castling, right? Once black gets castled, they've successfully survived all the pressure of this opening. And I know Hermat's had some enthusiasm, thought things were going well for white. The move I see that keeps some pressure on black is Queen A4. Then if black castles, you can take the knight. My concern with Queen A4 would be that black could offer this pawn sacrifice. And if I take, I'm scared that this bishop is going to be tied up for a long time. That basically I won't even have a way to extricate the bishop. And if I play bishop c6, then black can play the move b5, and that breaks up the pressure on the knight. You know, send white's queen back. Bring the rook this way. So I don't know that queen a4 is even worth playing. I'm pretty afraid of a6. White's just tried it. Queen a4. So a6 is the combative move for black. There's a second move for black that's also possible, which is king e7. It keeps the knight defended and gets out of the pin, I guess. Let's black continue untangling pieces, maybe. Bishop b1, interesting. Okay, Tradovich. Hello, Izana. Oh, man. Interesting. White throws in bishop d7. So that's going to just trade everything off. Looks like we're going to get a pretty safe position here. Thanks, KSJ. Yeah, I know people play games here. You know, we have some people who play and some people who watch. And the people who aren't playing, it's definitely for them to... definitely for the people not playing to chat. Doing well, Izana. How about yourself? Rook takes b1. All right, so we get an endgame. 2 rooks and bishop against 2 rooks and bishop. 1 mutually open file. No big weaknesses for white or black. Anyone have a sense of what's going on here and what you might want to do as black? Black's already made their next move, but I'm going to wait a moment to reveal it. We got 1 open file. 2 dark squared bishops. No real weaknesses for white or for black. Merle says the black king placement might be a little bit better than white's. It is a little bit better than white's, but the position is so closed at the moment. When a position's really closed, then it's really slow and development matters less, right? And the king being better placed is basically a development issue. So I don't know how much we're going to feel the king d7 just yet. Foo's Chess thinks black's better because they can occupy the c file first. And that is what I would do, Foo's Chess, yes. If I were black, I would plunge a rook into c2 before white counters the c file. All right, Bourbon Hound. You have a great day too. We'll see you again, and maybe at some point you'll be ready for the tournaments. But if not, that's fine too. You're welcome to just watch the show. Bishop c3, huh? And now that rook is kind of stuck, and the idea from white is against rook c8 to just play rook back to c1. And now the rook is surrounded and it sort of has to trade. And black doesn't get anything out of it, huh? Drawish, one would say. White hangs in there just fine. Oh, a beginner, cool. And a beginner, and you're not sure where to go to start improving. Okay. Well, you're lost no longer, Izana. You stumbled upon maybe the best place in the entire internet for a 400 who doesn't know how to improve or who's lost about improving. I mean, if you want to improve, sorry. If you're lost about improving and you also don't want to improve, then you're not in the right place, because here we can help you improve. Hang on a minute. Is there this little bishop takes a3 tactic on the board here? Hey KSJ, I think it's your first time playing here, but I got to tell you, don't take this in like a bad way, because I think it's totally normal that on your first day you wouldn't know this. But while you're playing a game yourself, I'm never going to come look at your game and talk to you about your game while you're playing. To me, that's pretty much like a kind of chess cheating. I'm not calling you a cheater. I'm just saying you don't know this yet. But I don't talk to people about their games while they're playing. I'm assuming that Road to 2000 and Hermats are not listening to me. And so we ask everybody while they're playing to, So I'm expecting these players are not listening. And before the tournament starts each week, I sort of announce, while you're playing, mute the stream so you don't hear me. Right? And let me give you an example right now, KSJ. Imagine it's black's move, and they're listening, and they see me talk about the move bishop takes a3, winning a pawn. It's a move that black didn't think of on their own, right? If they then play bishop takes a3 and win a pawn and eventually win some long endgame because of that pawn, and look, they're already in the endgame. Winning a pawn is a big deal at this point, If they won a pawn because of this and then later won the game, that wouldn't feel right to Hermats, would it? Like, Hermats would kind of be like, oh, I lost to David, not to Road to 2000. If Road to 2000 were listening and playing my moves, right? So as people play here for a few weeks or months or years, they at some point hear the message that they're not supposed to listen to the commentary while they play. Bishop f4. Where's that headed? This catches up with the live position. So for several moves here, black could have won a pawn with bishop takes a3. And the other thing is, KSJ, if you mute your stream, the other thing people know is that if they, I'm sure you're not trying to cheat because you're asking me about it, etc., right? But if you mute your stream and I cover your game, you can go back later and watch the recording. So that's what a lot of people do. A lot of people who play in this tournament do want me to look at their games. You're not alone in having that feeling of like, can you look at my game? I think I'm playing like a genius. Lots of people feel like that, right? So what they do is they play the games, and then later, and then when the game's done, they come in and they say, hey, did you look at my game? I'll say yes or no. If I say yes, then they know they can go back in the recorded video and watch it and see what my comments were about their game. And then it's very, very interesting. A lot of people use this as a learning technique. So Izana, you could consider this as well, right? A lot of people will play in the tournament and then go back later and see what I said about the game. And then they can compare, oh, this is what I was thinking during the game, and this is what David pointed out or noticed during the game, right? Like Hermatz and Road to 2000, they can go back later and learn this bishop takes a3, pawn takes a3, rook takes c3 tactic. And then they'll ask themselves, you know, why on earth is white playing a3 in this position, right? Suddenly they'll realize a3 is kind of a bad move here for white. Why? Because at some point, black's going to want to play rook c8, rook c2, right? And to stop that plan, white's going to want to play bishop d2, bishop c3. And whenever we put our bishop on c3, we're going to have to worry about a bishop takes a3 tactic, right? So now suddenly we've got some like deep strategic idea that we're learning as well, right? That maybe it's not good to put the pawn on a3 with these dark squared bishops here, even though it seems protected, right? And this rook c8, bishop d2, rook c2, bishop c3, this is a very logical sequence, but bishop takes a3, right, is a big deal. So they'll learn that afterwards when they go over the game. Now we get a rook trade. We're into pure bishop ending. White wants to trade the bishops. Black agrees to it. Oh my goodness. There was a chance to eat a bunch of pawns here. But black has just been very, very willing to do lots of trading this game. Look at all those pawns. That bishop could have gone munching. Instead, he commits... Wow, interesting move from white, not recapturing. G4, great move, keeping the king away. Brilliant. Man, oh man. White kind of saved the game there with that brilliant G4 move. I didn't even know this. I don't even remember knowing this pattern myself. If pawn takes here, black would have gotten their king into really good position. Right? Very, very powerful. Look at this brilliant idea. Takes G4, keeping the black king away, and then that pawn white easily recatches it with the king. Nice. All right, Izana asks, so what should I do? All right, Izana. First things first. If you're 400, one of the main way you're going to improve is playing games. Just playing them, gaining experience by playing. All right? The second way you're going to improve is by asking your opponents after the game if they have any thoughts or advice for you about the game, right? Because, I mean, I'm assuming if you're a beginner rated 400 that you're often going to play people rated from 600 to 1,000 who are going to be more experienced and better than you, and they'll be able to win some games against you and then give you some tips. If nobody can beat you, then you won't be able to improve, but your rating will go up until you face people who can beat you, right? And then they'll be able to give you tips. So number one thing is you want to play games. Number two thing, this king and pawn ending is super interesting. So you want to play games. You want to ask a couple questions about the games afterwards or think about them a little bit yourself afterwards. And see if I've got this Campbell Blythe game here. Okay, I see how to find it. A third thing you're going to want to do, Izana, is to practice some tactics. Let me get a link for you to a video that's going to lay out some of this advice so you can re-listen or watch it. Copying it from Twitch to send it to YouTube, which is funny since it's a YouTube link. Here's a video, Izana, that you can watch. This has my advice laid out for getting from 400 up to 1,200. Everything you need to do to get from 400 to 1,200. But I'm happy to talk about it with you live and in person and answer any questions you have as well. Yeah, there's no prizes in these tournaments, KSJ. So the winner gets more or less the same thing that the others get, which is, you know, experience and fun and so forth. Let's check out how this king pawn ending is playing out. Yeah, normal online matches, Izana. We get a pawn trade. Now we've got a pawn race. They're going for queens. White gets the queen first. Oh no! Queen d4. Check. King defends the pawn. Check. 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 Now the white king needs to eat these pawns. I'm going to take a look at Rupture versus Campbell Blythe. Yeah, in a moment. Okay. Queen c4 just keeps giving checks. White's not sure what to do with this extra queen. You can check the king around the pawn in circles, but you're basically going to play ring around the rosy and gain nothing from it. The only way to really win is to go take these pawns with your king and accept that you're going to have to trade your queen for that f pawn at some point. Brings the king in the wrong direction. No, you're coming off just fine, KSJ. You're totally fine. Give some more checks. Do folks understand the technique I'm suggesting here for winning this game as white? You play something like king b7. Your opponent plays something like king g1. You take it, take it, take it, right? And you eventually come and collect this pawn. And then you've got two passers and you can make a new queen to win the game. Does that make sense? All right, I can call you Ash for sure. Okay, let's see how white's doing with the endgame. You can also do that Neko Koneko. You can check the king until it ends up on f1, and whenever it's on f1, move closer. But, you know, black doesn't have to go to f1. They can go to h1, basically. So... oh, white's succeeding. Black's king is repeatedly stepping on f1. And at the last step, white misses queen to g3, right? Winning the pawn by pinning it to the king. Here there's queen d2 checkmate in 1. But they trade the queen. And now the game starts over. White's only got seconds on the clock, by the way, to try to handle this endgame, which is part of the story. Was there a point in my own chess journey where I just didn't feel like studying chess? And then what did I do to get motivated? Or are you just lazy? Uh-oh, b5, black plays a5. Now black's king can press white into the side and black's winning now? Oh my goodness, black wins the endgame down to queen. White runs out of time, but it looks like white's also losing. Let me just check. King here, flank. Here's a draw. Okay. Keep the opposition one more move. King here, flank, here, and white's in time. Okay, so white is never losing. White's still okay in the final position. It's only on the flag that they lost. Yeah. Okay. Whew. Johnny, I've never had a moment personally where I didn't feel like studying chess. I know a lot of people have had that. I've always enjoyed studying chess, so I've never had a point where I didn't want to study. Where would you find your opponents, Izana? So right after you finish a game on chess.com, there's a little chat window that comes up where you can talk to your opponent. It's in the interface. I can show it to you here, 1 second. So when your game is done, there's a little area over here where you can say hi. Thanks for the game. Like that. You see? And then if your opponent says, you know, something nice to you, if they say, you know, you're a jerk and I hope that, you know, that the devil comes and kills you or something like that, then don't ask them for advice about the game. Just get away from that person and go find someone else. But if they answer with something like, oh, thanks for the game, I enjoyed it myself, or something like that, then you can say, so you played really well. Do you have any advice for me on how I could do better? You know what I mean? You say something like that, right? Or you could say like, wow, that attack you did was really powerful. Did you see any way for me to defend against it? Or I thought I had a good endgame position, but then just slowly I lost all my pawns. What did I do wrong? And then maybe your opponent will will give you some useful advice. So that's one good place to start. The idea was good, Sanyal? Great, so you can refine your execution. I know it's sad to have a great idea and mar the execution, in fact. It's even sadder, right? To have a nice work of art and then ruin it somehow. So, Izana, in short, tips for you: playing games, trying to learn something from the game afterwards, right? Which could be talking to your opponent about it, or just replaying the game, or once you've made some chess friends, you can go over your games with your chess friends, right? And then number 3, doing tactical puzzles, right? And that's going on chess.com and going to like puzzles, right? And then it gives you positions and you try and solve them. He says, a puzzle solution, you have one or more moves. I'll help you on this first one. It looks like I got into a tutorial somehow. That's odd, because I've done puzzles on here before. Okay, so this pawn on d5 can't really defend because of the rook attacking the king. So these things are hanging. Anyway, so you go to a position like this, you just try some moves. You know, you try queen f7, you try rook c4, you try knight c4. The computer will give you feedback, and you'll learn some tactical patterns. That's the first basis for getting started. Then you've got the link to the YouTube video I sent you, and then you can always come back and find me to ask me questions, either on YouTube or on Twitch when I'm streaming live. And we'll gladly try and help you out. All right, so now we want to go to check out Ash's game. Sorry, my computer is slow. I'm trying to click over here to get this. Yeah, do puzzles on Lichess. It's the same thing, or Chess Tempo. Anywhere online where you can do some puzzles, Izana. The video will give you more advice, but basically you want to solve a bunch of puzzles because mostly people find tactics via pattern recognition. It's not easy to find new tactics if you've never seen the patterns before. So we need to see a lot of tactics in order to recognize them ourselves later. Yeah. You got lucky. You stumbled on the right place very quickly here. All right, so now let's go, and we want a game between Rupture and Campbell. So we're going to click on Rupture's account here. We're going to go to their past games. Here's the game with Campbell. Oh, let me fix my screen share right. I probably have it all messed up. Okay. So this is a game that that Rupture won. So we're not going to be able to teach Ash too much. Ash just wants to show off a little bit that they played a good game. And we're going to let them do that today. Because it's their first time and we're just going to be nice. Alright, so here Campbell moved the queen away from where it protected the bishop. These bishops were staring down each other, and every move the players had to be ready to capture or recapture, etc. Here Black moves the queen out for attacking purposes, loses a piece. Rook d8, the bishop escapes. We get a knight trade, and White ends up with these pieces on very good centralized squares. Fair enough, Ash. G6. So to my eyes, that weakens this diagonal. So I might consider trying to maneuver my queen into those squares. The other thing I might try and do is use that G6 pawn as something called a hook to make a pawn trade and add my rook to the attack. Let's see. H4. All right, JBS, you want me to have a look at one of your games? H5, Queen A5. Oh man, looks like Kirito and Ash are destined to clash. Okay, and so Ash uses the technique I mentioned immediately, H4, H5. Seems good. Trades, opening up the file for the rook. Whew! And there is now a forced checkmate combination with rook takes h7 already. Let's see what White went for. Knight g5, bringing another piece to the attack, threatening the h-pawn. Now trying to maneuver the queen here, but yeah, this gives Black a little bit of a chance to resist, maybe with rook f8. They check, and check, and check, and then find rook f8. Nice. In this position, by the way, Ash, where you let your queen get chased away, you can finish off the game like this by just breaking through and going for the checkmate. Your bishop's covering these squares, your knight's covering these squares. If they take your queen, you got a checkmate. Woo! And that's right. Every move that you give your opponent a chance to play h5, it's like a small chance that they could defend a bit. They're never going to defend forever, right? Your position's winning. You've got these two beautiful pieces here. But, you know, if you don't break through, you're giving them more and more time to maybe land a comeback. Let me show you the first breakthrough that you had, okay? It's very similar to the second one. In this position, as soon as you traded pawns, this is the very first move after you trade pawns. Do you see this, Kate? Ash? Very first move after you trade pawns, you can already go rook takes h7. Right? As soon as the file is open. Bring the next rook. King here. This is called like just destroying the defenders. When you sack a piece for some of the pawns in front of your opponent's king, when you've got more pieces than your opponent near their king, at some point you can just start crashing through. You know what I mean? And then you just keep bringing more pieces and checkmate them. Yeah. Crushing, right? So you're right. There were two different combinations that could have won the game faster for you. Exactly what you were asking for, right? Here, rook takes h7. Right? You play knight g5. Now we get checked for a while. Here, after knight g5, you should still be playing rook h7, right? So you get checked for a bit. And now here again, rook takes h7. Basically every chance you have, rook takes h7. Your opponent plays h5 in the game, so you see that's going to slow you down a little bit. Now you're trying to open up that file, right? From before. Trying to open it up, which is good. Now they sack, cover some squares with the queen. Whew. Yeah, it's a little complicated here. G5, nice move. Knight F4. This is a long chase. What a hunt. Woo! That was a long hunt. So I can feel in that hunt, Ash, that you don't have full control, so to speak, right? I can tell you haven't predicted the whole sequence. You're kind of chasing the guy, hoping that he's going to run out of road, you know, and that you're going to catch him at the end. But you haven't planned the whole thing for sure, right? I can feel it's a little bit out of control in terms of your calculation. So you can definitely get a little more precise in terms of looking at the move you're going to play, seeing what their options are, where can they go, can you catch them, etc. And Jay Keith, I will get to you next. I'm just finishing what I was doing here with Ash, right? Yeah, it's not fully calculated, right? Like, you have an idea what you're doing. You've got enough pieces. You're chasing the king around. You're giving checks. You're probably giving checkmate, right? But you don't have like the clarity of seeing like, aha, there's the checkmate. It's 3 moves down the road. I go here. They've got these 2 options. Then I go here. They've got this option. Then I get them, right? So the calculation can get a little bit more, as you get more experience, of course, you can get a little bit more precise with your calculation where you really predict what's happening. For example, when playing a move like Queen D3, you can predict that they've got to go here, right? And you can have in mind already what move you're going to play. Here you have Rook G3, King here, Knight G2, or you have F3 check, only square King G5, Queen G6. So yeah, you can just start predicting some of that a little bit more, with a little more certainty. All right, good game. Good game. Now, Jay Keith, JBS891. My rapid rating is 1600, so I'm going to look for your games in the 13 to 1700 group. By the way, folks, look at Kirito-kun down here. I hope that Kirito's not listening, because we have mentioned several times not to listen while playing today to Kirito, but there's actually a pretty instructive position right here. Queen H3, threatening the checkmate. Black plays H6 to keep the queen away. And Kirito does just the kind of sacrifice that we were talking about, Ash, right? Trading a piece for pawns, thinking white's got enough pieces to come through and checkmate afterwards. But compared to your game, does white have as many pieces? We were talking for you like a rook sack followed by the file is open so the next rook can come, right? You also had a knight in the area. After pawn takes, queen takes, white's only got 2 pieces playing for the checkmate, right? So if black could defend the checkmate, then this sacrifice is not as unstoppable as the one that you maybe could have done, right, Ash? So here, one possibility is you play F5 to try and block out one of the pieces, leave white with just one attacking piece. She can check back and forth forever and get a draw, but she can't checkmate by herself. Another option for black would be knight F6, stopping queen H7 or bishop H7. That's going to hold off any checkmates for a while, right? And another option that sometimes works is to make space for your king to run away with rook E8. Here, however, the king can't get very far, right? Yes, 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 Ash. Locking into your game. That's one of the things I try to teach here. When you're playing, mute the stream or close the stream. Turn off your phones, right? And just focus on your game. I do trust you, Ash, but I'm actually going to go answer somebody else's question now because we just looked at one of your games. So enjoy your game. try focusing just on it and seeing how you like the feeling of just focusing on your game. We're going to go look at a game of Jay Caith's here. You can enjoy losing eventually. I do. All right, JBS. So JBS has a rapid rating of 1600, by the way, folks, but Blitz and Bullet around 700 to 800, half of the rapid rating. Losing 80% of games on time, and when you play quickly, to not lose on time, unbelievable blunders. I hear you. And yeah, it's true. Look at that Blitz rating of 647 right now. So you could add the Blitz and Bullet ratings together, and it would be lower than the rapid rating. Amazing. All right. So it seemed complex to me. I think maybe Jay Caith wants us to look at one of their games. So yeah, well, the first step to me is to enjoy playing, and then you can worry about improving. But let's have a look at this game. I'm not seeing any moves in the game. What's wrong here? Oh, it's 0 moves long. That can't be the game. Boom, shalakalaka. Okay, maybe this game here. Let's have a quick look. Nice. Nice play from both sides up to here. Jay Caith wins a pawn. Ooh, black tries to win back. That's super spicy right there. So that opens the rook's attack on the bishop. If white takes back, black will be good, but white throws in another in-between move, attacking the queen. Yeah, black's going to be down a piece now. Tries to bring an attack with the rook, but white's just got more pieces here than black. Looks like white's just winning. Threatening mate and winning. Okay. Seemed complex to me. Well, I don't know which game you're asking about, Jay Caith. This game here, once you were up a piece, you were definitely winning. Once you were up a piece, you were definitely winning. I would say that trading your knight for the opponent's bishop here, that didn't seem to help you. That knight looked pretty good. But I mean, in general, you're up a piece and you won. So it's pretty good. Yeah, I think you're safely winning the whole time. All right, let's go back to JBS's profile and see if we can see anything about what's going on with their blitz or rapid or bullet. Let's see, maybe stats. Blitz. Blitz, they've played 14 games. Well, Kirito and KSJ or Ash are kind of new here, Far Eastern. They're bringing a level of intensity I'm not accustomed to. Bullet, 1,000 games. Okay, so they've played tons of bullet. So it's not that they haven't played bullet. JBS has played tons of bullet, and that's really their bullet rating. Highest rating is 863. Current rating is 750. Yeah, so they've been higher than this before. So they've practiced bullet. It doesn't get better. Let's see. I'm thinking that they might need to practice blitz instead of bullet. Let's see. Rapid. 12 games. Not that many. This is past 9 days. Let's go all time. Okay, long ago you were also a 700 in rapid, and you've really made a huge improvement in the last year. You've gone up like 1,000 points in a year, J. Cave. In 2024, you were still under 1,000. And then you went up to 1,600. That's incredible. 580 games. Okay. Here would be my advice, JK. Do you want to get better at blitz and bullet? I can give you some advice for getting better at blitz and bullet if you want. If that's like an interest for you. Oh, Jake Haith is in a new game, so they can't hear my questions. All right, let's watch this game. Boondock Striker against JBS. We've got a Queen's Gambit-like structure. Let's see what opening the game started with. Sort of a London into a delayed Queen's Gambit. Controversial move here with the knight e5. I think as white I would just play bishop back to g3 because knight e5 can't black take, and I don't like this change in pawn structure from white side actually. Okay, so black castled, white castled h6, rook to c1, which is a semi-open file for white where there could be some pressure against c6 and c7. Rook e1, maybe at some point you could play e4, but I don't know how that matches with this knight here. To me, these players are actually not caring enough about pawn structure. If I were white, I would just do this to black's pawn structure, right? Why not? Instead, they're each sitting there willing for the opponent to make the trade. It's interesting. Very rare to see people hold the tension like that and not care about doubled pawns at all. I normally don't care about doubled pawns very much, but here I think knight takes c6. It's got to be a bad pawn structure for black. And if I were black, I would play bishop takes e5, and I think white's pawn structure is not amazing then. All right, Spider, you got that game memorized now? You can go show it to a friend if you've got it memorized. It's a good way to check if you've got a game memorized as well, folks. Go out and show it to somebody else. We've picked, I believe, I was going to say we've tried to pick, but I'm pretty confident. We've picked some really fun games So if you're able to show those games at a chess party, other people are going to appreciate them. So when you memorize, this is for people in the Dojo training program. Each cohort has sort of one game to memorize. So if you've memorized your game, you can now go show it to a friend, and they will appreciate it. Bishop takes e5 gets played here. Pawn takes e5, queen trade as well. And now the knight has to move. Maybe e4, the most central option. Maybe h5, just trade yourself for the bishop. Possible as well. Yeah, Ash, do I have a schedule when I stream? Not exactly. Some things are scheduled, like this weekend tournament's almost always at the same time. There are 2 weekly tournaments. One is Friday night and the other is Sunday morning. I mean, it depends where you are in the world, if this is night or morning for you, but there's 2 regularly scheduled tournaments. Knight g4. Okay, so black goes after this pawn. Very ambitious move, trying to win this pawn. Gives white a chance to maybe go rook d7, rook c7 meanwhile. Okay, so you're in Pacific time zone like I normally am. So yeah, so we've got a tournament called Friday Night Fights, which is Friday at 8 p.m. your time. And then we've got this Sunday morning arenas, which are at 9:30 your time in general. Very occasionally there will be a change in the schedule, but those 2 events, maybe 50 or 51 weeks a year are being run at those times. You're at it right now, Ash. You're literally playing in the tournament right now that you're saying you can't make it to. You're currently playing in the 9:30 a.m. tournament. G5. Yeah, it's 3 hours long. And you are in second place, yes. Boondock Striker goes to the 7th rank. So this pawn's going to die, but this one will too. Knight g5, bishop e5. Right, because this bishop is hanging, so white doesn't want to just take a pawn and let this bishop go. White has to make the trade, then take the pawn. It ends at, well, what's 3 hours after 9:30? You have a chess class coming up. Cool. You don't have to play the whole tournament, Ash. It's 3 hours long, but lots of people play for, 1 hour or 2 hours out of that 3 hours. Yeah, the games are supposed to be instructional as well, Spider. They're supposed to be like aesthetically pleasing, right? Flashy, attractive, beautiful in some way, right? That helps us be excited about it and remember it, and then also have something instructive in it, right? So have something to make you remember the game, and then have a benefit to remembering the game. So once you remember it, you're actually remembering something useful. You want to play the whole tournament. Well, you're allowed to play the whole tournament. You just have to wake up, 5 or 10 minutes earlier, I guess. Wow, Tim. You've been playing very well lately, haven't you, Tim? Rook c8 from JSB with big pressure on this bishop on c4. White's going to be forced to trade rooks to have time to save the bishop. Black expands on the queen side. This move b4 is a threat. The knight with this rook undefended. White moves the rook away, and black pushes b4. And this piece is getting forced back, and black might be able to play a very nice rook c2. Kind of like white's rook d7, rook c7 earlier. Now black's rook is getting into the good area. Was Spassky always that type of player? No, Spider. Spassky had a very universal style. Ooh, white goes for knight a4, and what's the calculation on bishop c2, folks? Will that win or lose material? Boondock Striker with a lot of time left on the clock playing this knight a4 move, which looks loose to me. Black not interested in bishop c2. But what's your calculation, chat? Bishop c2, yay or nay? Does it work? So Spassky sometimes played principled chess. Other times he played super imaginative chess, aggressive chess, technical chess, which means, you know, trading pieces and playing endgames nicely. Spassky was a very universal player. All right, Opfashach and Fu's chess. Very alert. Very alert here. They point out that if black had gone for bishop c2, attacking two pieces, there is one way out for white. Rook c1. And suddenly black finds themselves horribly tied up on this file. I don't see any way to even get out for black. So, we've got to say that if J. Keith saw the move, J. Keith, JBS, if they saw bishop c2, they did a good job of dodging the trap by seeing rook c1 as well. Now the rook comes into the second rank. Holy moly, your dad played against Garry Kasparov? That's super cool, Ash, but Ash is really not a Soviet-sounding name. Oh, your dad didn't live in the Soviet Union. He was just visiting or something? An American who played there? Played Garry in a tournament. Wow. Amazing. Oh man, Boondock Striker. Thinking a bit here, suffering over this rook coming in. I feel like maybe Boondock Striker didn't see this coming because b3 made rook c2 better, right? Before the knight was covering this square here. So a move like king f1, centralizing the king and protecting the bishop, would have been a safer move. And now rook c2, and black wins a pawn, puts some pressure on white. Your family is Russian. Oh, okay. Yeah, Johnny got the right answer on YouTube as well about the bishop c2 tactic that didn't really work. So your family is Russian. Then my original comment stands that Ash doesn't seem like a very Russian name. Hey, Man of Squares, thank you. Very kind of you. I am doing well. Radon 4PC also wishing good luck to all the participants here. Very, very kind. Now bishop c2 comes in. Ay, ay, ay. Now against rook d2, black can actually play bishop takes b3 and the bishop defends the rook. So J. Keith is starting to get into the white position with the pieces here for black. Ash is just another nickname. Okay. Well, you probably have some things that you're good at, Spider. You probably have some of your own skills too. Okay. Johnny's saying maybe with bishop c2, which obviously is not good for black. Maybe there's a way out with rook c6, preparing to play bishop e4 and just trade out those pieces at least. Yeah, that makes sense. And even if white played f3, you could still go bishop e4 because this rook is undefended. And if it trades, the bishop escapes, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's a little complicated, but white would probably play b3 so the knight's defended. Black would probably play a5 so the pawn's not hanging. And then they'd be ready for bishop e4. So maybe black could get out of it, but it wouldn't have helped black. Instead, JBS was patient and has got 2 pawns. b3, a5, there is bishop b5, that's right, Elise. That's not obvious what should be done. Tim Westland, I've had that experience too. Tim Westland saying, folks, that he once played Swedish Grandmaster Johnny Hector in a tournament. Hector is known as an attacking madman, so I assumed I would be slaughtered in an attacking game, but he just ground me down positionally. Yeah, I once played Kavutskiy. Some of you may be too young to know, but Kavutskiy played a world championship match against Anatoly Karpov. And Kamsky was famous for being a technical player. That's like a quieter version of a positional player. You know, somebody who's just acquiring very tiny advantages and just trying to play end games and slowly outplay you in the end game. And so I assumed that, you know, he would outplay me, but that if the position was messy, I would have a chance to outcalculate him. And in fact, he didn't know the opening I played that well, I guess. And I outplayed him positionally throughout the game because it was an opening that I understood and knew very well. And then he launched like a semi-desperate attack and outcalculated me like crazy. Because, you know, most grandmasters, no matter what they might be famous for, they're good at like all kinds of things. Not just whatever they might be famous for. So a grandmaster who's famous as a positional player might slaughter you tactically, and a grandmaster who's famous as a tactician might play positionally against you. They can do it all. Black's got 2 extra pass pawns on the queen side, looking good. White threatens to win back a pawn on the king side on e6. Does that pawn matter very much? No. You know, if you played a4 as black and white took, I think you'd probably still be winning off of your passed pawns. Man of Squares, you'd have to do a profile of yourself or have somebody else do a profile of you to know what type of player you are. Knight e5. Skirmishing with the rook. I cannot KSJ. I'm busy here. Elise can confirm that Pia Kramling can win both tactically and positionally. Rook b7, getting behind the lead pass pawn. This is very good rook placement from Boondog Striker. Some people would go in for knight e6, but I mean, you just have to calculate some, right? After king here, then your rook is still hanging, your knight is hanging now. So you have to deal with the threat on the rook first here, and that's the best square for the rook. Then the king gets out of that hidden attack from the rook. Now the rook looks at the knight, preparing something or other. Black needs to get these pawns going at some point. That's the priority. We get a random check thrown in. back we go. So JSB doesn't know how to make progress here. Uh-oh, F3. White could have repeated positions, right? We just had this position. Just play king back to G1, right? Let your opponent go back and forth. But unfortunately, F3 gives back this pawn here. Check. So Man of Squares, yeah, I said a profile. Basically, you know, you or somebody has to play through dozens and dozens of your games, probably the most recent ones, and then sort of estimate, you know, how often are you winning or losing tactically versus positionally. Do you fare better or worse in end games? Do you have good or bad positions at move 10? Like, how are your openings? You make out a whole profile. And then it's useful to know, you know, is this player mostly calculating, or are they mostly just sort of playing on intuition, or are they reasoning out strategic stuff? You know, like, for example, I would say that in this position, the way for black to win the game is with the two queenside pawns. That's sort of a strategic consideration. And then you would want your knight and rook to help you control some of these squares so you could advance the pawns. And your goal is just to repeatedly find ways to advance one of the pawns. So black's just won by resignation here since white lost another pawn. But black did not show that they actually know how to win the game. I wouldn't resign yet, because what black did was they moved the knight away from their pawns, right? So the way to win is to bring the knight towards the pawns, right? So that's to come like here, defending the pawns. That way, you can, for example, play A4 and the pawn is defended, right? That's the kind of idea. If white keeps attacking your knight, then you try and stay somewhere near here that can allow you to make this kind of a move. King F1, maybe play rook C2, kicking this knight. And when the knight moves, we can advance a pawn. And you just sort of like keep doing that. So when you look at a bunch of your games, Man of Squares, you'll hopefully see some kind of patterns, right? About, is the person playing intuitively? Are they playing based on calculation? Are they alert? How often do they allow comebacks? How do they do in chaotic positions? How do they do in simple positions, etc., 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 right? Hey, Kirito. I guess I would suggest ignoring and not talking to them. Yeah. I think you have a choice online, at least, who you talk to. So if somebody's saying bad words, just close it and go on to another game. Or you could watch the stream for a bit if you've played enough. I know you've played a lot of games. All right. Oh, you're still in the game. Okay, then yeah, keep playing. Keep playing and try not to read what they're saying. To get a good, yeah, I mean, to get a profile, there need to be games. If you've never played games, you have no profile yet. Nor are you any type of player just yet, right? But once you've played some games, you can try making a profile yourself. And if you don't feel like you're strong enough to assess your own games, then you might have to get somebody stronger to help you with that. Yeah. Thanks for the raid, Miles Plays Chess, and welcome to our stream here. We're watching some other folks play chess. Oh, hey, Innate Optimist. Bishop, knight, knight, knight. Okay, equalish material here so far. We're going to go check out a game from the 1700 plus group, though, now, since we did just watch one from the 13 to 1700 group. close this one here. So these are tournaments we run every Sunday. They're open to everybody. No, you're welcome to ask your questions, Man of Squares. I'm here for that. Sinister Apple is playing another game here. Pretty early in this game, so maybe we'll jump on it and watch this one. Okay. Yep, JK. Yep, that's what I thought. You would eventually win somehow. I agree you would eventually win somehow. It would have given you more time to figure out and learn how to win that endgame if the game had gone on, since you didn't yet know how to do it. Alright, so black is down a pawn in this game and looking to gain some space on the queen side. Maybe in some case play b4, sink the knight into e4, get some counterplay that way. Okay, so we've got some question. So Man of Squares, I wouldn't assume that you need to reduce your level unless you play games and your rating drops quite a bit. It depends how strong you are. Like somebody who's over 2,000, if they don't play for a while, they're likely to get worse. But a lower rated player, not necessarily. They have less to forget, less skills and knowledge to forget. So if you're like 1,000, you're less likely to have regressed. You'll probably be as good as you were, and you don't need to go down. Also, sometimes a newer player, somebody in the 1,000 range or whatever, will actually get better without playing. Like other things you learn in life will make you better. I had a couple times in my life where I didn't play for a few months, and then I came back and I was better than before. So looks like Sinister Apple's playing this game too quickly for some reason. 14 out of 15 minutes left. Kirito-kun, if you have the most points, you'll win the tournament even if you leave the tournament. Yeah, you don't have to be in the tournament when it ends to win the tournament. Yeah, it's bad news for you, Elise, and everybody else who's already good. But the good news for you is that other people, like, their goal is to get as good as you are, and you're already that good. Yeah, Man of Squares, 11 to 1,200. I would just stick with your cohort for now. See how you go. I think I made a video on and posted to YouTube a video about making profiles. Let's see if it's up there. I could send you a link to it, Man of Squares, and you could watch the video and see if you feel comfortable making a profile of yourself. But it's true, 11 to 1,200 is... Wait. Jid released a song with Eminem? Sorry, not what I'm looking for. Making a profile. See if I can find this video for you. 11 to 1,200 is pretty low to be able to judge your own strengths and weaknesses and make your own profile, but okay, there is a video on it here. So if you're interested, you could definitely watch the video and try. Here's that video. For Man of Squares. But yeah, you'll probably need somebody better than you to help you figure out your profile, I would guess. That'd be logical. So I mean, it can be like a one-time thing, right? You don't need weekly chess lessons to get a profile. You could pay a chess teacher for one lesson, right? Or for one job to give you a profile of yourself, if you're interested in having that. Yeah, JK, since I saw that you were playing, I stopped giving you advice on your question, but I'll give you that advice now. I think since you're relatively good at rapid chess and relatively bad at blitz and bullet, what you might want to do, what you might want to try and do is just incrementally lower the time control and see how you do, right? So if normally you play 15-minute games, try playing some 10-minute games, see how you do. And if you can do well in 10-minute games, then try playing some 9-minute games and some 8-minute games, etc. Another thing which I recommend to almost nobody, except people who have like a real like blindness deficiency under 1 minute on the clock, is you could try doing some sort of like puzzle rush level tactics, right? This is not good for many people. Most of you probably do more puzzle rush than is of any use to you, because it's kind of pointless to do 20 back rank mates in 1 minute without even really taking in the whole board. But every now and then, I've met one other person like you before, JK. Every now and then you find somebody who for some reason is just hundreds and hundreds or even 1,000 points worse when they get low on time. And for them, doing some puzzle rush could be useful. Or some other, sort of speed drills. Okay, so we got A3, A5, Rook C2. Right. Wisely, these rooks should switch to this file. It's much better than the file they're on. And wisely, Sinister Apple's now spending some time. MG Weirdo, yeah, said maybe B4 would stop Black's B4 in tactics, but it does give Black a full pawn back, right? So now Black doesn't even have to set up their pressure, right? You just handed them the extra pawn. So no, White's not going to want to give the pawn back. Bishop G6, that's annoying. I was sitting here wishing White had played Rook C1 first instead of Rook C2. And now Black plays Bishop G6, and I guess Laurent is also going to be wishing that they'd played Rook C1, but I think this Rook to C1 is going to be better than sticking with the second rank, probably. Yeah. At least now we have a Rook on the C file, even if we don't get to double. Very good. You're welcome, Kirito. Seems you enjoyed playing today. Glad you were able to drop in and enjoy the event. And here's B4. Trades. Now the knight's got to give way either to A4 or to E2. Black's going to have knight E4. White's going to maybe want to maneuver the queen through H4 or E5. All right. Catch you later, JK. Have a great day. Knight A4, knight E4. Yeah, so this is where I am worried about the knight on A4, is that if we try to come through E5, Black can play Queen A7, attacking the queen and the knight. And that's where I wish I'd just put the knight on E2 maybe, right? All right, have a good breakfast, Ash. So maybe knight E2 better right here. Also, actually, the move knight B1 could make sense to come back to D2, link up with that knight, be on a route towards here. But knight E2 coming out at F4 again should be fine as well. Knight A4, it's actually risky to put that knight on an undefended square here. Taking a brief risk, but the reward, if we get to C5 quickly, that'll be pretty good. Can Black prevent knight C5 is my next question. Rook D5 prevents it. Seemingly. But it's a risky square. What happens on Rook D5? White could maybe play Rook C6. Maybe play knight E5. Rook D5, knight E5. Queen takes e5, pawn takes e5. No, that's winning. Rook d5, knight e5, rook takes, pawn takes. That's fine. Huh. George, here white's not going to want to leave the knight on a4 dangling for any extra moves. So they're probably going to go straight to c5 here. Queen a7. Idea is knight c5, knight c5, rook takes c5, queen takes c5, pawn takes c5, rook takes d1 check. Yeah. Tricky. You see there's no time for knight e1 here because threats are coming. And you'll see George, black's probably going to keep playing fairly threatening moves. It's unlikely white's going to have time for your maneuver. White could play b3 and just accept that the knight's stuck there for a while. Doesn't feel great. On the other hand, knight c5 doesn't really work, and there's no other choice, huh? Man, Lauren getting very low. 3 minutes here. Shows that they're not confident at all, despite the good position. Yeah, I think you just got to play b3. Let's see what white did. Looks like a move came in. My computer's just struggling. b3. There we go. So the knight's stuck on a4 for the moment. Not yet threatening to go to c5. Maybe black's threatening rook takes white's threatening rook takes c6. So black defends that. Plus introduces the idea of rook f6, harassing this queen. Lauren's time goes down a bit more. Ash, I sent you a message here. I don't know if you can see it or find it, but it's called a whisper on Twitch. What should white do? Normally you'd want to play knight e5, but that walks straight into this rook f6 move. Queen's very awkward on f4 at the moment. Okay, it's a weird looking move, but rook to f1 makes some sense here for white, actually. Knight c5 played. Oh. What's that about? White trades the rooks for the queen. I think Lauren just ran out of time and energy here to figure this position out. I'm just going to show you briefly this idea I'm suggesting here. Rook f1, you defend f2 against rook f6, but you also prepare knight c5 without having a rook on d1 that would hang like in the game, you see? If white didn't have a rook on d1, black couldn't play this queen c5 move. Sure, I'm not sure how to give you my Discord, but I have Discord. I don't know how to give you my Discord. Sorry. Alright, white wants to play queen b4. Black doesn't allow it. Type the username. It won't even show me my username because I'm in quote-unquote streamer mode, which is, I guess, the useless mode where you can't see what you're doing. That's super useful for streaming. But I think my username on there is something like, it's either D. Pruess or David. It really won't tell me. Yeah, it's very annoying. I mean, I'm clicking on it, and it just, even when I click into my profile, it doesn't tell me. It just shows me a bunch of dots. So, you know. Elise says go to the Chess Dojo Discord, and you can find me through there, maybe. George says it is D. Pruess. Okay. Meanwhile, this knight on d4 looks really good. That should hold much of white's position together. White captures that pawn. Queen a8 check, and then c6 would keep that pawn going. Okay, the queen stays on c8 in the way of her own pawn. Bishop takes aim. I guess with the queen on a8, this move would be annoying as well, this bishop move. f3 makes sense to me. Force that bishop to choose where it wants to be. Also plausible queen b8. If white plays c7, then rook e7 is good, right? But what if I played f3 first, like I'm suggesting? Bishop d5, and then c7. Now if black plays rook e7, I have this move lined up, winning the game. White's played queen b8, hitting the rook and the pawn and preparing maybe c7. Black plays rook g5, threatening mate in 1. Oops! Now white has to play f3 and sack their pawn, right? So, f3 first. Was white worried about this? I shouldn't just assume that I'm right about what's going on. Yeah, that would save the game for black as well. Okay, so it's a tricky position for white. Similar position here. Black's got rook c2 here, right? Oof. Queen e4 check. That's why black hasn't pounced. So g6. Eliminating the check. Preparing to play rook c2 at some point. White could play h4 to mess with that rook a little bit, or play something like queen d2 to defend the second rank. Queen b7 going after f7. Okay. The rook goes and defends. Those black rooks are not very well placed here. Rook c5. Alright, so now this rook's going to come around and get active at least, get behind this pawn to restrain it. Attack this, try and improve those pieces. Queen e7. White just doesn't have enough time to play this endgame properly, huh? Yeah, white doesn't really have any gold. They're slowly letting black improve the rooks a tiny bit. The game should eventually be a draw, but if white just moves around in circles, eventually black will win this pawn. And then try to double the rooks on the second rank against the G pawn as well. So white's maybe going to try and just give a perpetual here. It's reasonable. I mean, white had the advantage before, but I'm not sure it was ever winning. Yeah, any number of games is enough for 3 a.m. My lord. Bad time for you. Sorry about that. Awesome, Soren. Awesome. 250 points. Beautiful. George Hornsby, there's only a point in avoiding the perpetual if there's some kind of a plan to try to win eventually, right? I'm not sure that white has any plan to win eventually, right? There goes the B pawn. So does the pawn on E5 win in any way? Not that I can see. Now advancing these pawns more. And there goes the E pawn, right? Black can take it if they want to. Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, now the rook's double. When the rooks were super awkward over here, there may have been a chance to advance something like this, but oh, actually, this might be a moment to play E5. This might have been really important in terms of the awkwardness of the rook. Because once the rook goes over here, it's going to have a hard time getting over there, right? Yeah. That may have been important to try and disrupt the rook like that. Whoops, sorry. Here's the live position. So after F5, black took another pawn. And another pawn. And now white's getting to the point where it's lost. I would expect that black can eventually win this one now. Rook F4. White has to basically keep the rooks from both attacking G2 by having threats to check the king forever. It seems like you just can't keep it up forever. All right, here's a moment where rook F2 becomes possible. Then it'll be queen E7. So in advance, black does this. That's because rook F2, queen check, king H6, queen E3 check would hit the rook on F2. So black blocks that diagonal first. Maybe in this position, black should just accept the self-pin with king H6, right? And then the plan is to improve the rook from there. Elise is saying when you attack the g-pawn twice, and David Justice saying same thing. When you attack the g-pawn twice as black, maybe white can play king h1, and then if black takes on g2, sack the queen. like queen g8 check or something to get stalemate. Okay, makes sense. There should still be some way to win this position for black. There should be some way. Not a7 because the queen's on it. Sorry, I can't control the arrows very well here today. King h4. Okay, coming all the way up. I was thinking we'd go somewhere like this so that the rook has access to some squares, right? And if the king comes, you can just check him back and then head over here. No easy wins for black just yet. Rook comes out over here. Right now, we're prepared to give a check here. Queen f4 would be the way to try and stop it. If rook f1 here, Nahual, there would be queen takes g5 check before you can play rook h1, right? Whether the king and pawn ending is a win, Elise, if black retreated the king at some point. Normally, the 2 pawns against 1 would be a win, but here white would trade on g5 and have their king on g5 at the end, and they can just play g4, trade a pawn, and draw with their good king position, right? So normally it would be a win, but with the white king on g5, that's the only position where it's a draw. Zalo, you were wondering about trying to set up rook to g4 for black, right? Yeah, I was even thinking about, rook b4 to unpin, queen takes b4, rook g4 check, but that's also just a draw. All right, draw agreed. Black could have tried to move like this, waiting. Right, a waiting move. Because if white moves the queen on this diagonal somewhere, she won't be covering this a4 square. So you'd be able to get out. Right? And accomplish this maneuver, which looks surely winning. So let's say we go rook a5. What does white do? Queen on the 4th rank, there's rook g4 check. King h3, there's check on the 3rd rank. And then here. Oh, but now there's going to be queen f8, huh? With a draw. Ah, my position got stolen from me. Yeah, white's always got queen f8, queen f7 as well. So it looks like white did somehow have a draw in that final position, huh? Nobody's suggesting a win for black. Oh, and you guys are saying white could play queen f8 even instead of waiting. Yeah. Sorry, the position's gone now. But yeah, when the rook moves away from f5, white can always play queen f8, f7, etc. already. So that's why the rook kept coming to f5, and then queen e3. And you can never move the king away because queen takes g5 is drawing. Okay, yeah, so it was a complete draw at that point. Pretty incredible, right? White lost 3 pawns over the course of that endgame, and it was still a draw. Yeah. So the queen's good at giving perpetual check. Yeah. All right, folks, that's our show for today. The tournament's going for another 10 minutes or so. But blame it on the clock. But I mean, holding the draw is fine, right? It seemed that despite the low time, you were never losing. But there is a key moment in that game I want to keep as a puzzle for myself, actually. Let me see if I can find that game again. I find that game I just had. Okay, there we go. Losing the pawns you blame on the clock, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a general question of, should you sit still or should you try and do something with your pawns, right? And I don't even have the class or instinct to know what the answer is to that. But some people would just know, right? And so then the clock won't even matter to some extent, right? Like if we ask them 2700, they might say, oh yeah, white should just never move any pawns and there's nothing, then you can't lose your pawns and there's nothing for anyone to do. Or they might say, oh, you have to immediately go, e5, e6 and trade one pawn on the king side and then you always have perpetual. Like, so there's the clock factor for you or me because we don't know the answer. But there's players with a lot of like endgame experience who could just kind of know like a main idea or something, right? Like they might just know this is or isn't what we're trying to do. And that will help them a whole lot. But if you have to figure it out by calculating, then yes, then we can't calculate it fast enough in an endgame, right? With the time situation you had. I would have been in your shoes, in other words, because I didn't know. But I think there's probably an interesting little tactical puzzle here. To me, which is right here, white to play. So I'm going to save this position for myself. Because with queen b8, rook g5, we drop the pawn. With f3, there's maybe bishop c6 anyway, with the idea of knight c6, rook's double. And then you get like the same endgame as in the game, right? You play something like queen b8, rook c6, queen b4. So my question is there any like great move for white here? What's the best move? That's like a little puzzle. I'm going to save it for myself. I'm going to try calculating it for 10 minutes as an exercise. I'm going to write down the variations I think of, and then I will check it with a computer. And if it's a really cool puzzle, then I'll save it as a puzzle to give other people as well. All right, let's send off our raid. I hope everybody enjoyed the tournament.